Hello everyone. In today's Triassic profile we'll be doing is one of the largest dicynodonts of the Triassic, and that is Lisowicia. It's an extinct genus of giant dicynodont synapsid that lived what is now Poland during the late Triassic between 210 to 205 million years ago, meaning that it is one of the only animals that managed to reach to the earliest ration, that which is the late Jurassic. So the Lisowicia is unique amongst dicynodonts for its erratic posture, with all four limbs held upright directly under its body. This is similar to the limbs of living mammals and dinosaurs, but unlike the sprawling and semi-erratic posture typical of other dicynodonts, and shares many independently evolved features of its limbs with large mammals. The Lisowicia was the largest animal in its environment and was comparable in size and ecology to the herbivorous prosauropods, which otherwise occupy the role of large, high-browsing herbivores in most Triassic ecosystems. Now, although very large for Dicynodon, Lisowicia is still closely resemble other of its relatives, like Placerius from North America. It was heavily built quadruped with a rotated barrel-shaped body and large head with beaked jaws and short neck, stocky limbs, and very short tail. The skull is incomplete and known only from various isolated individual pieces, but there are enough to determine that it had a similar skull of other of its species. Temporal fenestrae were large, and the back of the skull was drowned into the high crest between them, providing a extensive jaw muscle attachment at a back of the skull. The snout was relatively elongated, like the other dicynodonts. It had a toothless, tortoise-like beak at the front, like some other Triassic dicynodonts. It is completely toothless and lacked even a tusk, typical of most dicynodonts. Instead, it had a pair of short and thick triangular projections from the maxillae jaw bone behind the beak, called caniform, possesses a similar related to the Istricinia and other of their kind. Likewise, comparing to the proportions of the quadrate bone in the back of the skull, its backbone and ribs are typical for dicynodonts. However, the cervical vertebrae of the neck are notable for having unusual hollows excavated into the sides, This is similar holes to the in some dinosaur vertebrae that are associated with system of air sacs and a bird-like respiratory system. However, unlike dinosaurs, Lisowicia lacks opening in its vertebrae for air sacs, and the interior of the vertebra is solid. This trait is unique to Lisowicia amongst dicynodonts, and its functions is unclear. The bones of the pelvis and hind limbs are very robust compared to other dicynodonts due to the massive size of the animal. Although a skeleton is incomplete, the massive size of various elements of its skeleton indicates Lisowicia was a very large animal, larger than any other dicynodonts. The body length was estimated at around 4.5 meters, 15 feet long, and with a hip height of 2.6 meters, 8.5 feet. And for their weight is estimated at 5 to 7 metric tons, 5.5 to 7.7 short tons, comparable in its size to modern elephants. And the remains of Lisowicia has been discovered in a village in the southern Poland near the town. The first remains discovered of that animal was back in 2006. It was first thought as a sauropodomorph due to their massive size, and it mistook the bones. They later recognized the fossils as those of giant dicynodon in 2008, by then known from the partially articulated skeleton and various isolated bones from at least two individuals between 2007 to 2014. Over 1,000 bones of Lisowicia were collected from the clay pit. It was not officially named and published as a new taxon until January of 2019, although the name and description were released online in November of 2018 prior to the official publication date. And prior to discovery of Lisowicia, the evolution of giant body-sized in the Triassic sauropodomorphs was thought to be exclusive a trait of dinosaurs, as other large herbivores, including the dicynodonts, were not thought to have achieved similar size. The elephantine size of Lisowicia demonstrates that gigantism also evolved in dicynodonts, and analysis of their body size as they evolved over the course of the late Triassic demonstrates that the like sauropodomorphs, Triassic dicynodonts were also increasing in body size. In fact, dicynodonts were constantly larger than the sauropodomorphs during the Carnarine stage, and both achieved similar gigantic size in the Neuron and the Rathatain stage, with Lisowicia the evolution of gigantism in both sauropodomorphs and Lisowicia at similar time periods suggests that the ecological factors may have allowed and encouraged both lineages to grow to giant size, as opposed to specific traits inherent to sauropodomorph dinosaurs as they had previously been suggested. For their for their diet, they are herbivores. Dinosaurs using its relatively long beak to crop and chew, although its large size implies it was feeding on a higher level of vegetation than it was typical for their group. It has been proposed that Lisowicia was a grazer that fed on low-lying vegetation. This suggestion was based on the orientation of the orbits and lower position, interpreted that is indicating that its head was held held tilted down towards the ground. In a position, the slightly upward directed orbits would now face the eyes forward towards the horizon as it feeds. It indicates that they mostly ate soft vegetation and conifers. And predation. Numerous bite marks have been found on juveniles from the same locality where Diceratops lucivicia and the predatory archosaur smoke were found, indicating that juvenile Diceratops were preferably and actively hunted by smoke. Diceratops bones fragments have been also identified in the proposed coprolites of smoke, implying that Diceratops like Lisowicia were major of its predator's diet. And you might be wondering, why are there no Diceratops in the Triassic or even the Cretaceous? What happened to them? Well, back in the very late of the Triassic, there has been another herbivore that has outcompeted the Lisowicia in Diceratops, sauropodomorphs. It has been suggested that they have been outcompeted by sauropodomorphs and were incapable of achieving similar large body size. And for that, the absence of any large sauropodomorph herbivores is curious, as they are present in many other like late Triassic ecosystems, including nearby localities in Europe, such as Plateosaurus in Germany. It's possible that giant Diceratops like Lisowicia competed directly with sauropodomorphs. However, it was also possible that their absence was unrelated, and instead, Lisowicia grew its massive size to fill the ecological role of large browsing herbivores, otherwise occupied by sauropodomorphs in other ecosystems. And unfortunately, Lisowicia was one of the last of their kind. We'll never know what happened to them, what caused them to become extinct. Either they've been outcompeted or climate change or change of its diet. We will never know. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe, and see you later, guys.